Good evening, everyone, and welcome yet again to one of our sessions. As you know, if you've been with us, we've been considering a whole range of issues, particularly since COVID. And tonight, we are having another look at something that I would imagine is of concern to most of us, particularly in our community, which is the cost of living crisis. But we want to kind of reflect on a bit more about what that's about. But it's also about us sharing our knowledge and experience so that collectively, as we say as an organization, we can achieve, and in this case, we can achieve potentially better financial outcomes for ourselves by sharing our knowledge and experience. This session tonight is organized by the Watford African Caribbean Association, and in particular, a lot of the work has been done by our Black History Planning Group, for which members are here tonight. You're not going to hear too much from me, hopefully, tonight, because the evening session that we are embarking on is going to be led by our Vice Chair, Amidou, who you can see in the picture now. So I'm not going to say any more. We'll put some stuff in the chat as we go along. Oh, and please use the chat. Amidou, I think, is going to do a presentation. You will have questions, comments, then please use the chat and put them in there as we go along. And when he's done his presentation, we are going to open up to yourselves, and we'll pick up any questions and address them as best we can. But for now, I say welcome again, and I'm going to hand over to Amidou to take you through whatever he's going to take us through. Amidou.
Thank you, Clive. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this year's session of a repeat of the cost of living presentation we did the last time. At the thick of things, we thought we'll reintroduce it to sort of activities so that we can share experiences, but also help members find ways of understanding what's driving this, and also what it means and how it impacts on us, and maybe get a few opportunities to share ideas on how people are managing. I must say, what you're hearing from me, perhaps some of it is not new to you, but also I have to thread a fine line. Although I'm an accountant, I cannot offer financial advice in the stricter sense. So I've tried to roll back on areas that might be that inclined, but I'm happy to have a chat with members as well outside this. But for now, we'll just stay on the wider path, and then in the process of addressing questions, I might be able to come up with insights that might help you in a particular area.
Zoom call.
You may feel we need to eliminate some more light on. So Clive, if you could please help with the slide. So really, essentially, the presentation will focus on how we got here, i.e., what were the triggers for the cost of living crisis, how is impacted on society or the community at large. Also, what help there is, if any, from the government, remembering that this started a while back, and how to really build financial resilience, i.e., what can you do? Because I think this far into this process, we've exhausted all the toolkit we have in our toolbox, but it doesn't mean that you can't refine the process by looking at certain areas. So I'm hoping that if I haven't covered certain things, that you probably have, intentions to discuss with me or us to look into, I'll do that as well. So I'm trying to make this not too numbers centered, but just really middle of the road. So if you feel you want me to touch on anything, please do so, and I'll do my best to touch on that. So our first introduction would be really why the soaring cost of living, which is now become known as the cost of living crisis.
Can I just check, Amidou, that you're seeing what I'm seeing?
Yes. So you got that basket of food and shopping basket, is it? So next slide, please. Okay. So the reasons for where we are varied, and we'll touch on them slowly. But the trigger really is the COVID pandemic. And what probably might not have occurred to a lot of us is when the pandemic came about, we stayed at home, they didn't venture out. So normal commercial activity just really froze. But in the midst of all that, there was pent-up demand. So a lot of us had support from the government in one way or the other. But that money was there building up. We couldn't spend it on goods and services. So what happened is, after some point in the pandemic, that pent-up, if you like, reserves that people have in their finances had to go chasing after goods and services. And because everything was actually constrained by COVID, production was not at the level it was, service was not being provided at the level it was. We found ourselves where we had money, but we didn't have the services to really match our needs. So that's how the COVID pandemic impacted on that. The next point was the Ukraine crisis. I think when we at our last presentation, the crisis had just emerged, but the extent and the duration we're not sure about, but now we're clear about it, because Ukraine is deemed to be one of the bread baskets of the world in terms of its grain and oil that it exports across the world. That really impacted on supply. So therefore, the limited supply meant that prices surrounding wheat, things like sunflower oil and fertilizers, which farmers would need to produce crops or to grow crops, and even for chicken feed, they all just really were impacted. So consequently, where there's a higher demand than there's supply, the prices will go up. And then the same thing with gas and oil, because Russia is a major supplier. The sanction meant, again, supply was affected. So therefore, demand was higher. And how did we feel it? We noticed our energy bills went up. So did electricity, because that source of supply was constrained by this crisis going on in Ukraine. Next point, please, Clive. So we talked about the Ukraine crisis, the rising global energy prices, particularly with gas. So it just meant, for example, countries like China, who use gas, together with Europe and India, their hunger for supply was not being met by existing sort of production capability. So therefore, the prices will rise to meet demand, and that's how we all had those spikes. I think 4 increases or more over that period, and the only way the government could intervene is by bringing in that scheme where they were pegging these prices at certain levels to help us survive that. But the whole world was chasing after fuel supplies, which affected us as consumers. And I think at the heart of that time as well, we noticed drivers were having problems getting supplies of gas and fuel. People were queuing at petrol stations, but even when you went as well, the prices were not what we used to. So that all was the perfect storm that came with the crisis and with COVID. So with transportation cost, we noticed, I think there was time when the lorry drivers were having problems just delivering things, but also the supply of labor for having getting drivers to really drive around supplying businesses meant supply chain problems. Few drivers being chased by transportation companies meant, combined with the fuel cost increase, transportation cost rose up, and that fed into what we bought at the supermarkets, which really meant inflation became higher to what it was. So the supply chain problems, again, when COVID came about, the world just froze. People stayed at home. Goods that used to be produced in different parts of the world could not be delivered in time. So if you remember, even getting things like face masks, PPE equipments were really, really problematic, because just the machinery or the oil that sort of kept the machinery going was just short. So therefore, everything just took that bit longer, became that bit expensive, which was impacting on things. Yeah. Labor supply shrinkage was a big point, because if you remember as well, during COVID, a lot of people withdrew from the labor market. Some people took early retirement. Some people just had more time to themselves and they realized work was not the be-all and end-all of life. So they decided to withdraw from the labor market, which meant employers had to pay more to attract whatever supply there was in the market. Brexit, we know that with Brexit, again, came supply chain problems with some. Do you remember when the ports had issues? Lorries that were coming over to supply products were having problems crossing because it was just being delayed. And that really exacerbated the supply chain problems we had between the UK and Europe. So Brexit, with that came the barriers, as we said, and as we're experiencing now. If you notice food products, particularly, if you look at vegetable prices, look at queues, look at onions, look at carrots, everything just really exploded in prices. And that was a consequence of that trade arrangements being severed. It didn't help by the fact that the UK and the pound's position, if you remember, you used to get £1.50 or $1.50 to the pound. And now I think you'll be lucky if you got to 130. But what that meant, both for the euro and for the dollar, is you had to pay to get more to get the same product you're used to buying from those parts of the world, because the pound in its purchasing power was weaker. So consequently, it was impacting us on our pockets as well. And then bird flu, if you remember, there was this time when there was this bird flu. What it meant is a lot of effort had to go into stemming that tide, and it meant really culling a lot of these chickens and everything that we used to rely on for egg production and for poultry. So what again that meant is the supply was constrained. So again, the demand that was always there couldn't be met by the supply chain challenges that came with that epidemic as well. So in overall, these various factors we've highlighted here combined to really, come at a time when the world was challenged through the pandemic, and consequently everything had to be frozen. And when you restarted the process, things were just in the wrong place, and we're still suffering the consequences now, although a bit better than before. But it would take a long while to address all these issues that conflicted to the cost of living crisis that we're experiencing now. So that's just if you remember when we're going through at the thick of things 18 months ago, slightly longer, it was about fuel, about warm, keeping the house warm, heating was a problem. So everybody was going out and making themselves heard in the form of protest that you saw here in this photo. So we've explained how we got here, but I guess all of us, in our own little different ways, had to deal with the implications of that. We were all impacted differently, because when COVID came, everything ground to a halt, but also our habits were challenged, our lifestyle was challenged, in that the things that we used to be able to afford all of a sudden became challenging, because we were earning incomes that were not inflated to the extent that prices were rising. So something had to give in. And that's why we all had to then start juggling our finances in ways that we never thought, and for a longer period than we've ever imagined we would. And so if we look at the way this impacted on us, as in cost of living crisis, all of a sudden we had difficulties paying for groceries, fuel and utility bills. So as an example, if you went to the supermarket, I remember dairy products, they just shot up. I mean, a yogurt that you'd have bought for £1 was costing £1.80. Eggs were just astronomical. Similarly, if you remember flour for baking, you had to queue to get it. Oil was just really astronomical as well. So what we're saying is the impact, although different for everybody, in common, these are what we encountered. Shopping for groceries was higher than normal. Fuel, I remember when at some point it was really to fill your tank, you felt the pain. So all you will do is cut down on your driving, or just really say if you used to use 50 quid to fill your tank, you use that and did less traveling. Similarly, utility bills were increasing faster than we can contend with. It just meant cutting down on your lifestyle, you cook less, you heat the house less, you use the lights less, you use electricity less. So the impact was significant for all of us because it forced us to change the way we did things. When it comes to shopping, some of us struggle to really maintain a balanced diet because, as I said, some food products just became very, very difficult to really buy in the quantities or to the qualities we're used to. So for some sections of society, they were having to do without buying substandard quality products just to sustain themselves. So weekly shopping cost, again, we'll see how that shot up, but it was quite high, and it was not the dairy products alone. It was just like groceries, as we said, in terms of veg. If you went to get other things like tin products, everything went up. I mean, if you look at sardines, I remember when sardines were like top 20p. Now you're talking about 55p and the rest. So you can see how that is increased, just as an example. And I'm sure some of us can give equally meaningful examples that way. But for all of us, weekly shopping costs went higher. So we were finding that we had to look at alternative brands, alternative supermarkets, or juggling. In my case, I just figured out which supermarket was strong in certain prices, and I tried to do my shopping around their strengths rather than going to one, because I found not one supermarket was strong in all the prices that I was interested in shopping for. So again, we'll discuss that later on. Again, we'll talk about buying less than normal. And again, I cite the fact that what £10 would have fetched you before the cost of living crisis couldn't. So I remember a friend who works at a supermarket was saying a customer came in, they had a set amount that they brought in, they paid in cash, and this day they came in, when they tried to check out, that X amount that they used to use to buy everything weekly couldn't, and they had to start haggling. Okay, do I buy less of this or more of that or less of everything? So those are the things that we were encountering when it comes to spending less on items as well. Then we became reliant on the government's energy price cap. Although the price cap was there, it didn't really mean we escaped the inflationary effect, because if you needed to heat your house, you needed to. So what you're having to do is maybe turn it for less. But if you continued consuming the same amount of gas and electricity that you did before the price cap, you still paid a lot. So the price cap just was what the average household will spend, but it didn't mean we all benefited from it in that context. Then the other bit is like we started cutting down on personal and family expenditure. So you just focus on necessities rather than going for the treats. Holidays became a thing of the past. And similarly, just luxury items were luxuries in that you aspired to them, but you couldn't really go about them the way you did before the cost of living crisis came about. And for people with families as well, the same thing. You just watch the pennies. I mean, you try to make things go for longer, as an example, or did less of something. So the bigger point as well is all of us, in some way or shape, have accommodations that we pay for in the form of rents or mortgages. And imagine before COVID, we're talking about 1% for mortgage rates, and that shot up to about 4.5%, 5%. And rents again were being increased in the hundreds, which for people that are earning a limited amount, it just became difficult for people to manage. So all is conflated to really squeeze on our lifestyles, squeeze on our ability to do things, and squeeze on our finances. So the outlets were far and few. And I think to this point, we're still living that experience, because although inflation has slowed down, the prices that we're paying for the pace of increase has reduced, but the increase is still there. So we are not out of this mire yet. Next slide, please. Sorry, yeah. So this is this graph here is just an indication of the inflationary effect that we went through for. Sorry, I'm just looking at it on my own bit here, Clive. Sorry, I can't read that screen well. Yeah, so this is just to give us an indication of how food price inflation came manifested itself through COVID. So if we went back to, for example, a cutoff point of March to May 2022, food price increase was just about 4 to 5%. At the peak of food price inflation, we were paying 16%, and that was around February to April 23. So that's just literally last year. So it hovered around 16, 17% for about 3 to 6 months, and it started tapering down to 15, and where we are now as of December to 8% or slightly higher than 8%. So at its height, we were paying 16, 17%, and none of us here had in their pay pack any increase that really matched that. So what it meant is your earnings were being impaired by these increases, which meant you had to cut down on other things and just focus on necessities. The indications are that with CPI continuing to slide, this inflationary effect will start decreasing to what we think might be 2% later on this year or the next year. But again, that's not guaranteed, because as we know, it doesn't take a lot for these shocks to come about again. As an example, the crisis happening in the Middle East means, containers or ships are having to detour around the continent of Africa, adding days and in significant amounts of money to the shipping bills, which unfortunately us, the customers, will have to pay for. So although the trajectory is that it will taper down to 2%, please just be mindful that actually that's not guaranteed, because it will be dictated by events that happen between now and then. Next slide, please, Clive. So I had just tried to give you an indication of our utilities and how it was actually sort of being managed. So in this graph here, we're showing what the average household was spending on gas and electric as of October 2021. So if you look at it, before the price cap came about, we're paying just over £1,000, or let's say 1,200, 1,100, the average household. And then that started creeping up from January 22 onwards. It went to close to 2,000. And we then saw it rocketing after that, which is when the government introduced the price cap, like in the summer of July 22. It then shot up to above 3,000. So the government came about with this energy price guarantee between October and April 23, just to really, if you like, subsidize our bills, help us absorb the shock. So that's that green square you see, that's where the energy price cap was. And that was actually tipping it or tapering it to just above £2,000. But it just meant in those, if you like, 12 months plus, our gas bill almost doubled. And at worst, it was actually quadrupling to about 4,000. It had the price cap not been implemented. That's that extra, if you like, set of dots you see above. If it had not been implemented, we're talking about paying 4 times as much. But with the price cap, it, if you like, softened the blow for householders, and it just meant that it was kept to just above 2,000. But I remember the average household was paying about 200 to 250 to 400 pounds per month for gas and electric. So although the price cap was there, on average, some people benefited, but most of the time people had to fork out more. And where we are with the price cap is that as of January this year, it is meant to come down by 5%. So I don't know how much that would mean for the individual, but the government really has, if you like, reduced the subsidy. And we're thinking that provided things continue the way they are, gas prices should be really tapering off from the spring onwards. But again, this really would be at the mercy of events, world events or global events that could really scupper that and impact on supplies. Next slide, please. Right. So we talked about inflation. I just wanted to, I haven't got any data that goes beyond September last year, so sorry for that. But this is just to really give an indication of the interplay between what we're earning and what we're paying for. So wages, which is the blue line, if we go back to January 2020, wages were increasing at about 3% per annum, whereas inflation was just below 2%. So what it meant is what you took home was actually sort of helping you to pay for prices and leaving you with an extra 1% more to spare, because what you're being paid when inflated for inflation was higher than what you were paying for, which was just below 2%. And then we saw that drop to just about 0% in July 2020. And then it started rocketing. So you can see from January 2021, when we found ourselves in this position called the cost of living crisis, that blue line, which is what we're paying for goods and services, just started doing its own thing. So if we look at January 2021, it just went above 4%. When if you compare it to July 2020, it was below, it just under zero. So in those, if you like, 6 to 7 months, it just went up to that much. And then it continued in the summer to about 7%, nowhere near what the red line was showing, which is what our earnings were, if you like, wages. Wages were 6.7%. So you can see the gap. If you're paying sub 8% or 7%
You got that the wrong way around.
prices, you can see that what you were earning was about a percentage point below that. So you're having to make up that extra difference by saving somewhere or cutting down on other things. That's where the squeeze on our finances comes. That's where the crisis that's to do with our cost of living started coming up, because the sort of, if you like, the price increases were not favoring our wages. So sorry, I was saying the wages. So up to July 2021, wages were 7%, which is well above price rises. So from if you like, the middle of maybe the summer of 2021 onwards, going to January, we then started seeing prices going above what our wage inflation was sort of, pegged at. And that's where the squeeze comes in. So the gap between the red line and the blue line, price and wages, that's where the squeeze was coming from. So all of a sudden, you are having to, like, if you imagine we're having to jump to that height where the red is. So the flex we needed was where we started saying, okay, to flex, to make up that difference, we have to cut on other things. And that's where the crisis in our cost of living came in, because the squeeze on our finances, represented by this red line and the blue line, had to be actually made up for by squeezing other things that we didn't sort of had cost to do. And that's where people then had to make sacrifices. So that continued until before September 2023, last summer, when they would then sell prices actually falling below what wage increases were. But yet still, those price increases were locked in. It's just the increase. So if you went to get your yogurt, if you went to get your vegetable from us, if you went to get your eggs, although this is saying it's come down, you're still paying the inflated prices. So you haven't escaped that squeeze, for want of a better word. Although the interplay is showing that wages are higher, but if you look at this plus mortgages, now when you renew, we're looking at 4%. The hope is that with decreases in interest rates coming, it might be 2%, but it's still a double to what you were having before. So for want of a better word, we haven't escaped it. We just have to find ways of anticipating these changes and actually organizing our finances in such a way that it helps us absorb this in a way that doesn't really disrupt our finances overall. Next slide, please, Clive. Right. So the question we keep asking ourselves, how much longer have we got for this trajectory of price increases, or CPI, which is a consumer price index, to increase? So what we know is that from October last year, October 2022, this fell from 11% to 4% in December. So this is December 2023. So the indications, as I said earlier on, is that this may actually continue to be the case. So it may halve. If it's 4% now, we expect it to settle for 2%, which really would be close to what was normal for us before. But again, remember, it doesn't mean that prices that we pay for in today's rates go back to where they were by 2% No, they're all locked up already, or locked in. So it's just that it will not continue to increase by as much as it did before. So has the cost of living crisis gone as a result of that decrease in CPI? No, because this increase are locked in. So we're forecasting that this will continue until 2025. But by the latter part of this year, maybe third quarter, fourth quarter, you start seeing things really looking favorable for us in a way that would mean we don't have continue to have to chase the price increases like we've done before. We are advised to expect some bumps along the way. Again, any international crisis that impacts on food importation, oil prices, gas, and all the other things that we need will really be felt in our pockets, because it just really affects the overall supply chain that we talked about earlier on. So just as a caveat, if you hear somebody saying to you, CPI is falling, yes, it's falling, but the damage is already done to our finances. So it's falling going forward, but the increases that we've been having to make do with have been locked in. So we actually haven't escaped that bind. Thanks, Clive. So this graph, again, I'm hoping that you can see this graph slightly. So let me just say. So what this graph is trying to denote is really where we are with CPI going forward. If you notice the spike in 2022, CPI was about 9%. So we come back to 2023, it started tapering down to where we are now in 2024, which is just below 4%. That's that, if you like, fifth bar going to the right before the end. So when we talk about where we think it will end between now and like 2025 and 2028, is that if you look at it, it's going to be below 2%. Okay, so we'll start seeing that. I think it'll be lower, it'll be at its lowest point, maybe just above 1% or 1.5% in 2026. And then it start picking up again to hover around 2%. So we think from the latter part of this year, we'll start being in that little more comfortable zone of CPI not being above 2%. But again, just remember, it's not good news in that nobody's going to go back and say, I'm going to reduce all these prices to reflect what CPI is today, because they're not coming back with goods or gifts like that for us. We just have to really realize that they will not increase by more than 2% on top of what we're already paying for. Thank you, Clive. So we did say we'll look at what government assistance there is. At the time that COVID was really sort of plaguing society, the government was very generous in what it did for different sections of the community. And this is what we had. For example, we had between April and May 2023, the universal credit, income-based JSA, ESA, and all this income support, there was an amount of payment to the tune of £301. Now, that generosity ceased at the end of May 2023. So anybody that was in receipt of that, the government is saying, because of all these indicators we've looked at, we don't think you need this anymore, so we're withdrawing it. So that's now not part of the arrangement we have. Again, tax credits for people on low income was pegged at the same amount. This was actually running up to May last year for most people. It may be that there are exceptional circumstances where some people still continue to qualify for that, but I'm not an expert on those areas, so maybe somebody else can shed some light on that. The next tier was between October and November last year, there was £300 for universal credit, JSAs and ESAs based on their income support and pension credit. Again, November 2023 was last year, so the government actually is taking this away from us. The next tier was the tax credits and other low-income benefits between November up to November 2023, again, £300. So it looks like all the, if you like, support that the government was giving never exceeded £301. I don't know who set it up, but maybe somebody knows better than I. So for tax credits, 300. Again, between February 22 and this month ending, there's this £299 for those bands there, universal credits, income-based ESA and JSA, income support and pension credit. So I guess we are really at the final month of the generosity that we had since the beginning of the cost of living crisis. And then the final bit here is the tax credits that the government would say between February 22 and the end of this month for low income benefits here is £299. So it looks like the shutters will come down at the end of this month, unless, Angela is here, unless Angela knows of other sources that people can seek recourse to. We are actually not going to benefit from the government's generosity anymore, so far as the cost of living crisis is concerned. Next slide, please, Clive. So having discussed all these things, I think, at the heart of what we're trying to do today is how we really building resilience in the way we really try to tackle our own individual challenges that came with the cost of living crisis. I say individual because really our circumstances are different and we all have different, if you like, levers to pull in this process. But at the heart of it is if we share the little we know are the little things we've been exercising as a way of surviving this, hopefully it will benefit sections of this group that probably have not had access or exposure to those sort of things. So I'll run through these, and by all means, please also contribute, because no one approach suits everyone. So I'm going to run through this in a way that's meaningful, and then maybe hopefully at the end of this people can contribute as well. So for parents, there's the opportunity to seek help with school costs and childcare. There's areas surrounding free school meals, and then for parents that have transportation needs, maybe they support that as well. So although those other areas that we touched on are ending in February, this month, I think there's still opportunities for parents who might want to explore these areas in need of support, that they can unlock this area when it comes to having their family or children in schools. Again, the household bills, I know that there is actual, if you like, a bit more flexibility in the market, in that some suppliers have started doing fixed deals, which I'm not an expert in, but there's always the opportunity to obtain advice on this through this, for example, the Citizen Advice Bureau or any organization that are in the know that can help you. So it's one area where, if you imagine, we have the price cap. Since then, suppliers have been bold to say, actually, we think we got offer fixed tariffs. So if you find you have a sort of variable tariff, for example, that is due for renewal, now is the opportunity to start considering what good deals there are out there. And no one solution will give you the overall savings you want, but it's a collective, if you like, range of solutions that will actually, if you like, consolidate to make a big, if you like, impact on how you survive this. So please don't discount starting with a £10 saving, something bigger than that when you collect them all. So look at the household bills and see how you can get costs addressed for you through the CRB. Okay, we'll talk about feeding the family. We're looking at affordable means here. And by that, it's really, really looking at alternatives that are affordable to you, rather than just, if you like a brand, if you like a dedicated brand or loyal brand sort of shopper, there comes a point when your pocket will be telling you that the pain is not worth it. So perhaps what you want to do is start looking at alternatives, start trying different things. It might not be overall change overnight, but maybe if every time you go to shop, you buy 10 items. If you said 10%, let me just try, that's one item, or 20%. So through the changes, you might find the right fit that saves you on your finances, but also exposes you to different experiences that could be rewarding going forward. So in my case, if I see things on offer that I thought, well, I won't buy it for full price, but for what they're offering it for, I can try it as a substitute, and that's where I change my shopping habit. So do not discount that. It's a big influencer or impactor on the way we maintain our finances. The other thing is join support networks that might have access to ways that you can save money. So, for example, at Thrive, we have the food bank that, again, families come to really make themselves avail them of whatever there is to share in food and clothing. So that's an example of a support network that, if you look around your areas, perhaps you might find one or two that can just really help you take the heat off what is a painful challenge to our finances. We talked about mortgages. Now we're at the point where most of I think about over 1 million people are due for renewal over the coming months or years. So if you have come to that point where your fixed deal is coming to is due for renegotiation, you reach out and haggle and go to somebody who can do a deal, reach out to the current provider and say, well, another provider is willing to do this. Are you willing to match it? I'm sure if they really care about you and want your business, they will really consider doing something for you. And also, this might not apply to everybody. I recognize that and respect that. But if you had money in the bank saved that is earning you less interest than you're paying interest in your mortgages, this is time to consider why throw good money after lower interest. So maybe, I'm not saying use your excess liquid cash to, offset your mortgages, but look at how you can cushion these interest rate rises by saying, if I really redirected some of my savings towards my mortgage, it just means the interest rate I pay on my mortgage commitments on a monthly basis is reduced by that much. So let's say you were getting 2% increase or 2% interest. I don't think it's even that on your savings, and you're paying 4% interest on your mortgage. Automatically you are better off by actually reducing the 4% payments you're making rather than thinking you actually getting the 2%, because you still got a 2% difference to make, i.e. you paying the banks more than they're paying you in interest. So rather than sacrifice that, use it to offset your mortgage payments, which would take the, if you like, the challenge of your, if you like, the pain of the higher than normal mortgage rates you're paying. Again, review your bills. And there's this thing about, I think we did it last time. This is important. Utilities, particularly mobile phone bills, what some providers are doing, they will increase it twice. They'll do it with inflation and CPI. So what that means is, if inflation is X amount, then they add CPI to it. You're being held to ransom twice. So I think the regulator is aware of that, and it's actually trying to make an impact on that. But for all of us, when we get that gleaming new mobile phone or that new contracts come in, we don't read the small print. But look out the providers and just check before your broadband is due for renewal, your telephone is due for renewal, and your mobile phone bill. Ask them, what is the uplift? Is it CPI only? Is it inflation? Is it both? If somebody is doing both, then you're in trouble, because it just means you're paying above the odds when it comes to increases it. And don't shy away from say, well, you're going to move away. They will listen and they'll do something for you. So again, collectively, they all add to make a difference in your finances. The next bit is overdrafts. They're here. Sorry, Clive, I think the slide is gone. Yeah. For those of us that resort to bank overdrafts, look at organizations or banks that offer free overdrafts, and don't be shy. Again, I'm not loyal as a customer. If you don't offer me what I want, I'm moving on. So if you find somebody who could do you free overdraft for a set period of time, consider it seriously, because it's saving you on the cost of borrowing, and that's another saving you can add to your savings pot. So look at the banks that are doing free overdraft deals, and then try and, you can haggle with your bank and see whether they can match it. But if they're not, why be a loyal customer when you're being robbed in that way? So I'll advise for you to consider that. We talked about the fixed deals and direct debit payments. So we talked about fixed deals coming at the back of these deals that are expiring now. But aside from that, if you are one of those people that don't trust the direct debit payments, you're shooting yourself in the foot in that it's costing you more. So maybe now is the time to really look at engaging your utility companies to see whether you can enter a direct debit payment arrangement, which they'll sell you the bill in advance of, and you'll know what you're paying, but it means that you don't pay over the odds as well, on top of the price increases. So the next bit is really budgetary discipline. I think last time we touched on budgets, and when we touched on budgets, it was really to really bring in the discipline. Again, if you had deployed that, I think what I'm saying to you is continue doing that. If you're facing challenges and you need my input to help you outside this session, I'll help you with templates. But what the budget does, it really helps you chart these challenges we face. So if you know you've got a month where things are going to be challenging, if you do a budget for 12 months, you can see it in advance of it coming. Then you start planning rather than let it hit you in the face when you less expect it. So I would say do a budget over a 12-month period. So you see what's coming in, what's going out, where the pinch points are, and how you can really bring in mitigations against that. By that, I mean cutting down on things, or drawing down on your savings, or going out to do any of these things we've discussed in the form of renegotiating contracts, seeking better deals. But if you have a budget, it gives you like a roadmap to work against, and against that, you can then see how you can actually save yourself from the stress that goes with having banks dictating your financial affairs to you. I don't think it's a comfortable place to be in, but also the budget can help you do that. So if you need a template, reach out to Clive or myself or anybody, and we'll try and send you something. Also, 0% interest. Again, we talked about free overdrafts. Look out for deals that have that, because 0% means zero, so you don't pay anymore. If you got anything that is like that has increases that you don't like, look for other people that do 0% rates and go for it. Improve your credit score. For those of us that borrow, you will realize that sometimes you're priced, i.e. the interest you pay is priced according to a credit rating. What do I mean by that? Little defaults on little payments can cause you problem. So even if you're setting up a standing order to pay the minimum amount of £5 a month, it really helps to making sure your credit score hygiene is better than if you didn't do anything. So sometimes when I have credit card bills that I know I will pay, but I might be too busy, I set up minimum direct debit payments, and I put a reminder to pay it on time. But if I have a busy spell, at least I know I won't have to pay surcharges in the form of payment default, and I won't also lose on my credit rating. So please, I know sometimes these things are difficult, but it can be done. So don't neglect that. It's a very powerful tool you can use to advantage. And again, all of us here, either being pensioners or at work, there are tax allowances that apply to us and our partners, our spouses, which you can play around with. So if you have like an accountant that you use or whatever, you can say, well, how can I really utilize the tax allowances between myself and my partner or my spouse to really come to advantage? So it's not one of these ideas that will give you the magic bullet that you need to be in a better place with your finances. All I'm saying is it's a combination. So please look at that. Look at these, if you like, points in that, guys, because I can tell you that's how I operate my finances. No one sort of lever would give me the magic wand I'm looking for, but collectively I can see how they impact. Thanks, Clive. Next slide, please. Thank you. So thank you all for listening. I hope you found the session useful. So now it's time for us to really delve into any questions you may have or any issues you may wish us to amplify on. And I hope you found the session useful.
Okay, Amidou, do you want to stop? Oh, I need to stop sharing.
You're the controller, Clive. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much for that comprehensive overview. It's now we're gonna open it up for people to come in with questions, comments, observations, and we can look at what's in the chat. And okay, so a few of these are my observations. Amidou. So I just made a point here that that one of the points that I think you alluded to was the fact that actually pay for people in work and also those on benefits wasn't really keeping pace with the increases in prices and so on, which itself is one of the features of having this crisis that we're in. Because actually, had those wages and benefits been keeping pace with rising prices, of course, we wouldn't have the deep difficulties that we've found ourselves in. And you gave an example, but I know for a fact that, for example, a tin of beans, baked beans, has gone up by about 100% in the last couple of years. And I don't know anybody who's got an increase in wage that's anywhere close to that. Um, uh, and of course, just to, again, the point you were making is that whilst inflation has gone down, prices have not been going down. The increase has just slowed down. So that people are still paying more and will continue to pay more for these items. It's just that it's not the speed of increase is not as much as it was last time. And like again, one of the points you raised was that about looking at rebalancing your basket and looking at that kind of thing. And one of the things I've certainly found is that big brands doesn't always mean you're getting the best. And a lot of people think that branding is what it's all about. But if you look at some of the feedback that we're getting from Which on other places when they do taste comparison, quite often these big brands are not anywhere close to being the best any longer. Much cheaper brands are better. But some of us are wedded to the idea that you've got to buy Heinz beans. Well, a recent thing I've seen said that actually it's no longer the best beans, most expensive, but not the best beans any longer. Um, and so on. And I've just made mention here about some little things. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day who was paying about 30-something pounds for their mobile phone bill. And I said to them, do you realize you can actually pay significantly less than that? You've got internet at home, you're not going out very often, and you're paying over £30 for your mobile bill. This person we thought about it, but it's an older person, and they've indicated I'm an older person too, but they're not going to change, and you really got to be conscious that actually when you're doing that, you're giving the big boys your money when you could actually spend it on something else yourself. And it's one of those things I just made mention of it because I think it's an area that people can actually save. We're all using our phones, so let's not pay more than we need to for it. And I think this is not me. I think it is Zora. I think you're responding to that. Yes, great savings can be used from your technological items and mobile broadbands. Similarly, you could save money in those areas. Is what I've said. And by the way, I'm going to do some comments on here, but by all means, put some comments in the chat yourself, or put your hand up if you want to ask a question. I would. Was that someone coming in? Okay. Okay, somebody. And just on the mortgage thing, one of the things that I found was that if you overpay your mortgage, it is a form of saving in a situation where you find the bank interest rate that you're getting for your savings is less than your mortgage rate, then actually you're throwing your money by keeping it in the bank, trying to think you're saving money, when in fact you'd be better off putting the money in the mortgage and reduce that particular capital outlay and be better off in the long run. And certainly that's been the case with me. That's one of the reasons why I'm mortgage free, and I've been for quite a while. Amidou mentioned the budgeting, and as he said, if anybody wants to have some help with putting a budget together, because I talk to people about this quite a lot. It's what really helped me in the early days when I was financially strapped. If I didn't knuckle down with a budget to look at exactly what was coming in, what was going out, I just wouldn't be in a financial position that I'm in today. And it doesn't mean you're going to be able to do everything, but it means that you can find a way of more easily manage your situation if you understand exactly where the let's say the pinch points are with respect to your finances. And the final point I'd make is that if you're financially prudent, and you have really got to be prudent for this, credit cards can actually pay you for having them. But I would only say you do this if you are somebody who's got really serious financial discipline, because it means that the only way you can do that generally is by making sure that you don't owe anybody any money and you actually pay your bill off every time, every month without fail. And if so, it can actually be of value if you do that. So, but I see Zora wants to come in.
Yeah, thanks, Amidou. A very informative presentation. I've been a single parent for coming up to 30 years now. And certainly when I was married, my ex-husband used to sit down and we used to have this little black book. And he was training to be an actuary at the time. And I used to dread those sessions because I just knew we didn't have enough to cover our outgoings. But it was a useful exercise in so much as back then we didn't have Excel spreadsheets. We just literally looked at what was coming in, what was going out, and what the deficit, if there was any. And I think some of those basic disciplines in terms of managing your budget is very, very useful even today. And certainly when I went on to try and manage my household as a single person, using the same activity in terms of what was my outlay, what was my incoming sources, and whether or not I could develop passive forms of income to support those. My main income in terms of work was very helpful. And what I would encourage people who don't do it already is to set up those systems. Most of us have access to a laptop these days, or even on our phones, and an Excel spreadsheet, and to look at what's coming in and what's going out and where possible savings can be made. So, Clive, you talked about overpaying. Now, because our mortgages are set up with compound interest, by overpaying, and you have to check with your loan company what the maximum limit is, because you can be penalised for overpaying too much, as I have done on a number of occasions. But what it does do is not only bring down the term, but and you need to be clear with your loan company where the overpayment is coming from, where you want it to be taken off. So if you want it to be taken off the capital amount, you need to make that very clear to your loan company. But what you should see in effect, if you've got a mortgage over 25 years, you can bring that down to 20 years or even less. And certainly I took advantage of that, and the term of my mortgage was brought down significantly at times when I could afford to make those overpayments. But I would definitely say keep it simple. If you haven't got access to a spreadsheet, just get a notebook and keep a tab. I think the other downfall at the moment is this tapping business. We're not, well, because we are being encouraged to be a cashless society.
Yeah.
I found that I use 10 times more cash because I'm tapping things. I'm just tapping for things. Back in the day, I used to take out X amount at the beginning of the week, and that amount would have to I used to have to manage on that. Now, because I'm not taking out that, lots of places aren't even taking cash. You have to ask if they're taking cash, which is ridiculous. And many places are saying we are cashless, we're not taking cash. It means that how we handle money, it is a very different experience. And for young people coming through the ranks, personally, I think it's a huge disadvantage. But there are many little things that we can do in terms of how we go about managing our money on a regular basis.
Okay.
That's what I have to say.
Thanks, Zora. Amidou, I see that Lawrence has put a question in here. And before you answer, I must say that, as Amidou has pointed out earlier on, this is not an advice session, because as he pointed out quite rightly, we're not qualified to do that. But we can share experience and knowledge and insight. So his question is, can you give advice over premium bonds versus ISAs saving versus overpaying pension? I presume that must be pension investment, investing in your pension.
Contributions,
There's
I
a
think you meant,
lot there, it seems to me.
Contributions. So really, I think as Clive alluded, Lawrence, I am not actually allowed to do advice. I think what we could do, point to sources where you can get clarity on these things. But in my case, I could not really step out of that boundary. My confine is to just do what I'm doing. If it comes to advice, maybe it's good to point to sources where you can get clarity on these things or share experiences here. But what I wouldn't discourage anyone from doing is investing. But whilst you embark on that route, please do your due diligence in that you know what you're getting into, but also let nobody give you the impression that investment is risk-free.
Okay.
Because
just to say, I'm not too sure, Lawrence, I don't know if you want to come back in with this one, but I'm not sure what you say what's best for middle-age demographics. I presume that's not for yourself, but what do you mean? And are you I mean, what type of saving, what type of investment, what type of management advice? What do you want to clarify that a bit more?
Okay, well, I do see myself as middle-aged, so
I don't, Lawrence, but I hear you.
but
I was ironing, so hopefully you don't need anything ironed. So go in your room. If you need something, then just let me know. Don't stand there. Yeah, well,
sorry, we can hear you, whoever that is.
okay.
All right.
I know.
Okay. Yes, Lawrence.
Yeah, it was basically. I understand you can't give advice, but I think the thing I was asking for is mainly from your experience. Obviously, you've been my age before, and
Sorry, could you speak up a bit, please, Lawrence? I can't hear you.
I hear what he's saying, though. So,
Okay.
so what he's saying, what would you suggest to somebody in his age group, which he thinks is middle age, but we don't think so. But
Well,
Lawrence, what I would say to you, myself, just looking at premium bonds, for example, the information I've seen suggests that if you invest the maximum, which is 50,000 in premium bonds, you can get a reasonable competitive savings return if you think about it in that sort of way. And of course, that's tax-free as well. And at the same time, you might be lucky enough to win the 1 million or whatever, but that's like doing a lottery in that sense. The only difference is that your money is always there. Your investment is there. But of course, as inflation is going up, in real terms, that's actually going down. But with the prizes that you are likely to win, they say that it's like putting your money in the bank, and I think you might get something like about a 5% return if you've got the maximum amount in there, which is 50,000, as I understand it. This is some information I've seen somewhere else. Now, at the moment, I haven't just done one myself. You can get an ISA, which is equally tax-free if you put the maximum 20,000 in there. That will pay just over 5%. So probably, I mean, you'd say that that kind of comparison means that if, let's say, you're going to get about 5% return, if you got that kind of investment in premium bond, they're both tax-free. So it's I think you take your pick, really. I mean, I've bought some premium bonds for my grandchildren, and in a couple of years, one of them won a little bit of money into it. My son was a bit skeptical to start with, but when he saw a small return, it was only a small return, he was a bit less skeptical about it. I don't know. Overpaying? Are you saying overpaying money in your pension?
Yes. So I have a pension an independent pension that I what's it called, pay into, and I recently seen some good returns, where it's been like 11% over the last like 3 months or something like that. So I was just thinking, okay, what if I put more into that? Obviously, my pension would be fine, but then I won't be able to touch it until I'm
Hmm.
past middle age.
I think going back to what Amidou was saying, I think as a neighbor, we're definitely you need professional advice vis-a-vis that, because if it was a company scheme, generally speaking, the view is that it's something that you should do at any age. You should be doing that because your employer normally put in quite a bit of money in it, and it's generally secure, and you're almost certainly going to be better off in the long run. But when you're investing in a personal scheme, it seems to me that you need to take advice about the type of scheme in an event. People do say, though, that invest in a pension, rather than just dependent on the state pension in the long run, is actually a good idea. I don't know if you've heard the same, Amadou.
Yeah, I think they're tax benefits, but also they call them AVCs, additional voluntary contributions. There's a ceiling or cap. I haven't looked in that area, but I think from a tax point of view, it is worth giving a go. But as I said, I cannot point to the direction at all because I'll be misleading you even if I attempted to.
That's fine. It was more to get your experience in those fields and what you may have done in the past, or what has helped or worked for you in the
Okay,
past.
okay.
It's
So
not so much advice telling me what is
right,
more like
okay.
what you have done
Thank
and
you.
what you've seen.
Yeah, but generally, I think as a consideration, for where we are, at this point in our lives, you're on the right path in that it's something that I would say explore further and see what advice you get and how it resonates with where you want to take it.
I would say, Lawrence, I think it's a good support the idea is a good thing to do. I think the issue is really what's the best vehicle for doing that,
Mm-hmm.
and are you on? Because I understand that, for example, some of the companies that you'd invest in, their charges are higher than some others. Some of them, they anticipate a rate of return will be higher than others. That's where you kind of do need to take that professional advice regarding what is the best way of doing that. I would say if you were in a company scheme and that offer was available to you, then I think most people would say you'd be foolish not to pursue it for tax and other advantages. Um, but although tomorrow is not a given, I think we have to proceed on the basis that there's likely to be a tomorrow, and particularly with the increase in pension age, I think it makes sense to make some independent decisions so that maybe you might be in a position to not be entirely dependent on the state pension when you get to be 75, for example, when you might not have an estate pension to come in your way. I'm speculating. I know that the age has been going up, and who knows where it's going to end.
70, 77. Yeah, I think assuming Lawrence doesn't have anything to, I just wanted to get back to the point I made earlier on about cards.
Yes.
I think it's just worth pointing out that there's several. I mean, one of the techniques I use, I don't use my phone. I don't have any cards on my phone because as we had earlier on, it just really becomes easy tap on tap off. So what I do is, like, I've got prepaid cards. So if I know that I have £100 to spend and nothing more, I just go out with that card. So I put £100 on it. If I get to my limit, that's it. I don't have anything else to worry about. I know I've spent my target. That's it. So, Zora, if you are looking at ways of really weaning yourself of that ease, consider one of these prepaid cards where you just top it up. And no, it's a wonderful feeling when you go and you usually say, oh, you can't pay for this. You realize actually, yeah, this is where the discipline starts. So there's a few cards going on where you can link to your current account and just top it up. If you going out, just use that. You'll find eventually. And
I don't actually have any issue. I'm just saying you have to. Sometimes you might buy a small item.
Yeah.
And you go and look in your account and you can't remember.
Yes.
Buying that small item.
Yes.
Because it doesn't come out in the name of the retailer.
Yes.
And you're thinking, where did I spend this money? I'm just like, I can't remember.
Can I come in on that credit card issue there as well? Because I must admit, I have to tell you, just this week, I contacted my credit card company to say that, oh, I don't think I've spent this money. You sure you got it right? Only 2 minutes later, directly, oh yeah, I didn't spend that money. I had to send him another email to say, sorry, I'm wasting your time. I didn't do that. But on a serious point, relating again to credit card, I made this point about you can, if you're disciplined, you can make money from a credit card. But I think there's a certain proviso. If you're in debt and you owe money on a credit card, then invariably, no matter what reward you're going to get from having a credit card, it's going to be less than what you're going to be paying in interest on a credit card. So, in fact, using a credit card as I have done to get cash, and I mean, I made some expenditure over the last year, and I collected £300 on my credit card. The most I've ever collected, but I usually collect at least £100. And but unless you're in a position where you are paying all your bills, you don't owe debts, it's not something that I would suggest you do. But if you're disciplined, you'll get yourself into that position, so long as you've got income coming in, where you can actually be in a position that you can pay all your bills off every month. And if you're in that position where you don't have any debts, even your mortgage, quite frankly, you need to prioritize paying that off. But the credit card used for purchases can be almost seen like a debit card if you pay the bill off every month. And at the same time, for example, I don't want to, there's a card, and I won't advertise them, that they'll give you like 1% back on all of your expenditure. And if you're in a position with a young family and so on and so forth, and you're spending regularly, then actually a credit card could be a good way of purchasing, so long as you're able to pay off the bill each month, and you'll then get something you could buy a Christmas present at Christmas when it comes down to it. That's what I'd say. But if you're not disciplined, and if you have debts on credit cards, I wouldn't suggest you pursue that course of action.
Yeah, that's a good point, Clive. I also think credit cards has its advantages in that when you're making large purchases over the internet, because sometimes you take a risk, some of these suppliers are not genuine, you can always go back to your card company, you get that insurance, so you do a chargeback. So that's very good. And the other hack is, Clive talks about making sure that you can clear your credit card bills in time rather than incur interest. So I've got like a credit card which has got a nominal amount of like £200. And they will approach me saying, do you want to increase the limit? I said no. So that's one that I know, small purchases that I know I can just clear off, I just put in there. So you have it giving you the protection you need, but not really saddling you with debt that will build up over time. So you can try different hacks like that. But certainly it has its place in help you manage. And then there's this 0% balance transfers that if you know you within your finances can weather the storm by transferring it and paying things over a period of time at 0%, although there's a charge in front sometimes. Those are all, if you like, things you can consider with using credit cards. But again, as Clive is saying, it's for the disciplined. It's very easy to think you can overcome the challenges that come with building up credit card bills.
A quick point before I come to you, Shirley, just to say,
Okay.
on the credit protection side, I know a few years ago I saved about £6,000 for that very reason, because of the credit card, and because there was a risk associated with what I used the credit card for. I deliberately made ensure that was what I did do, and actually, so apart from anything else, actually, if you do have a card and you are going to make purchases, and particularly, as Amidou said, online, it's worthwhile considering that. But actually, you do need to be in a position to be able to pay the bill off, because I've just seen what they tell me, there's about 30% APR if I don't pay my bill off. It's a lot of money. So it has real value, but it's got to be used in a very, let's say, careful fashion. What's the term I use? I forgot what the term. Disciplined fashion. Shirley, you wanted to come in.
Yes, I'm not sure if I'm correct with this, but I believe if you have got a credit card, it does help your credit rating. If you haven't got any credit cards at all, then you're almost seen as a bad debt. I might not be saying this correctly. So Amidou, you can correct me if I'm saying it wrong. It's advantageous to have a credit card just to be able to build up your ratings.
You're not sorry,
Clive.
Clive.
Just to say, I think having it and maybe make one or two purchases on it, so that is really helpful, I believe, for your credit score.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
Pearlie.
No, I was saying she's not wrong, because I have a credit card, which I really only use it if I'm buying big items, and I don't use it regularly. And last year before, I wanted them to up the amount, because I wanted to book some flights, and what I have in it, there wasn't enough to book the flights, so I wanted them to up the amount.
Uplift.
So I was on the phone and they said they came back, they refused, and I said, why? Because my credit rating. I said, what credit rating? And I panicked. I said, I don't owe any money. I don't have anything outstanding. So I asked them to send it to me, and they send me reams of paper from way back. And everything comes with a note. I don't owe anybody any. So I went to the bank, and the lady said to me, do you know what it is, Mrs. McFarlane? You don't use your credit card.
Yeah.
I said, so they're penalizing me because I don't use my credit card. They said, yes, you have to use it when you do your shopping and thing. Use your credit card, because it's, and then they're offering, because I had to ask them to take off some of the money that was on the card at some stage. They were just building it up. And I didn't want to have all that money on a card because I didn't need it. And so I thought, also, that's what it is. Because you don't, if you have a card and you don't use it, they think you don't need the money or whatever. I don't know. But you don't have a good credit rate if you don't use a credit card.
Yeah.
Yeah, you caught between the devil and the deep sea on that one. If you don't use it, you lose it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't know, you were saying about paying off, but whenever I use it, I go into the bank, and once it's there, I pay it even before they send me the bill. So I don't know if it's a good thing you pay it off.
Yeah, it's good. I think it's good to pay it
I
off.
think you do.
Yeah, I think it's good. It just shows that you really credit worthy, and the more you clear it, the better your credit rating is. So.
Well, I get a credit rating, but they've never sent me any money, Clive. I need to know which one you have.
I'll tell you which one I've got, Pearline.
Yeah.
And I've had it for a good few years, but Zora wanted to come back in.
Yeah, am I still on mute?
No,
Am
you're
I
not.
on mute? Right. Okay. I just wanted to know, in terms of quick wins for people on the call, what recommendation in terms of quick wins do you think they should focus on in order to see quick and genuine real improvements?
All right, Zora, I'm gonna ask Amidou to hold on for a minute because I was going to kind of ask him to finish on that, but so let me just check. See
Sorry, what time is it? Is it time to wrap up now?
it's
it's 3 minutes.
it depends on whether people have other things that they want to discuss. Amidou has raised quite a lot of issues. We've raised quite a lot of issues. I know there's not as many as normal people on this call, but did anyone else have any comments, any questions, any observations before I asked? Yes, Lawrence, you wanted to come back in.
All I was going to say was about it was regarding the credit cards and the credit limit and all of that. Because I've well, not recently, but in the past I've had run-ins with credit and problems and issues and such. So one of the things I found out is that when it comes to your credit rating, if you have 75% of your of available credit, or maybe I'm saying it wrong, but like if you have like £1,000 of credit from your credit card or whatnot, and you only spend 250 of it, then your credit rating will be very good. But if you spend any more than that, like go above 40% or get up to 75% that you're spending, so like if your credit card is on 750, that's when it affects your credit rating poorly. So they do want you to spend it, whatever money that they're giving you, but they only want you to really spend 25% of it, and that way you can keep your credit rating very good.
Okay. I've not come across that because I must admit that I've not had that issue. Amidou, did you want to come back to that, or did anybody else want to come in? You can always put something in the chat, please.
Yeah, I want to say something, Clive.
Yeah. So, Amidou, did you want to say anything in relation to what Lawrence was saying about?
This is new to me, so I haven't heard about that. Yeah.
Can I say something?
Yes, Shirley.
Yeah, I've got 2 credit cards that I was not using at all. There was nothing on any of them. And just before, probably about October or so, one of them wrote to me and said, if you don't use it by February, we're going to take it back.
Yes.
So I ended up having to buy something really stupid just to keep the cards in case I ever want them. So that's just my experience.
Yeah, and I've had that happen to me recently too, Shirley. The thing is, if you've not been using the card, I had another card that I thought I might want to keep it. So I did like you. I went and purchased something. I mean,
I think maybe the situation is if you're using it and you're not paying them, you're not clearing it. That's what gives you a bad rating. If you have £1,000 and you have £700 outstanding and you're only paying a percentage of it a month, and you're not paying off the £700, I don't know if you're always building up interest on it, that might be the problem.
I don't know. I don't know if I can say this definitively, Pearline, but I think it's more, for example, if you've not paid off the minimum amount per month, if you've missed a payment, those are big, what they call them, red lights to say that
Mhm.
is somebody who is not particularly reliable. So what the suggestion would always be, you must pay at least the minimum amount as required per month and on time, not late. And that doesn't, as I understand it, because they want to make money off you. That's the reason why that's the reason why they give you a credit card, because they want you to owe them. But so long as you're paying the minimum amount, at least, then they're getting their money. They're happy. But when you start getting late, they say, "Oh well, this is somebody who might start defaulting. I mean, this is going to be serious." So yeah, yes, Lawrence.
But that's exactly what I was referring to. So if you're not clearing the amount of
Mm-hmm.
certain percentage outstanding,
Mm-hmm.
if you 25% outstanding, your rating will still be very good. If you leave 75% outstanding, then it's going to be very poor, and
Okay.
it does have an effect. Now, if you are going to pay it outright and clear it every month, then that it doesn't affect you at all.
Okay.
But if you do have any outstanding, it's better to have 25% outstanding than to have 50 to 75%
Got it.
outstanding.
Got it.
But just to say though, that's if you are in difficulty, and I'll share an experience that I had before. There's a point when my financial situation was dire. 3 young children, not enough money to pay the bills, and I had to put together a budget to try and eradicate anything that wasn't critical to my spending. And one of the things that was helpful to me was, Amidou alluded to this, was the idea that you could get 0% credit over 36 months as it was then. So I was able, and you can transfer your balance, and they will charge you anything from nothing to 3% or 2.99%. At the time, interest rate was like now, something like 5 or 6% or more. And by, say, taking something out for, say, 30 months, then so you've transferred your balances, and for 30 months you pay let's say 3% upfront cost of doing that, and over 2.5 years, that's the rate of interest on that is little or nothing. I did that, and what I did, I said to myself, this is a loan. I put that card in the drawer, and I paid off the money consistently. Paid the minimum. I paid a minimum amount off each month, and while saving up the bulk of it, because you have to pay the minimum. If you don't, then the whole thing would lapse. And at the end of the period, unless I was transferring the balance on to somewhere else, I paid off the whole of the balance, because you're then in serious territory. And actually, that process was really helpful. But again, it's about being disciplined and having a budget. If you don't have a budget, I would say don't even do this, because actually you're not going to be able to manage your incoming and your outgoings in a consistent fashion.
Yeah, I think you're right, Clive. The budget is the spine of what you're trying to achieve here, because it gives you sight. It tells you through what you have in front of you what the picture looks like in advance, and I think that's where the trick is. So if you don't have a budget, it's like, I guess, as I liken it to walking in a dark room and trying to feel your way around. Whereas if you have a budget, it's just having a torch that shows you where everything is, and you're able to avoid all the obstacles. So it's hard initially, because you got to do some serious thinking, and sometimes when you see the numbers, you don't like it, but that's why you do it, because you see home truths come your way, and then you're able to really confront those before they get bad.
Okay. Any last points? Because otherwise, I'm going to ask Amidou to reflect, as he would have been since we've been talking. I'd say 2 or 3 quick wins that we should take away from this session. And also, but also, in the meantime, just say to people who are on here, if this has been of interest, if there's anything else that you think that would be of interest, as far as looking at our financial well-being is concerned, happy for you to put some in the chat and we can pick it up to look at what we do going forward, and we'll put it out there with the recording as well. But Amidou, I'm going to ask you to say 3 quick wins, and then I'll wrap up after that.
Thank you, Clive. The areas just really, I think, are quick wins, really. As we talk about saving oneself money, the budget doesn't cost you anything but your time. Believe me, it's a powerful incentive for you to really embrace that. If you haven't done one before, please try it and do several iterations. The first time you might not get it, but just look at what's coming in, what's going out. You don't even have to sit in front of a computer, just write it down. And slowly you'll develop a picture, because you know what's coming in broadly for everyone, just what's going out. And through that, you can see if the bottom line is negative, you're in trouble. And everyone else of us that has tried it before has had that problem, but that's how you start dealing with reality. And as Clive is saying, it doesn't cost you anything. I'm here to send you a template. Even if you want to say, let's deal with fictitious numbers, it's just so that you get the mechanics of it. And then you can then, if you like, plug in your proper numbers and walk away with it and see what it does for you. So I'm happy to help, or I'll devise something that I'll make available so people can use it and they can, reach out to me if they need any clarification on that. The next big win, I think, is since most of us are homeowners and we've all got mortgages going on, that's one big area of spend that must not be neglected. So if you imagine, how many hundreds, let's say even on average, if you're spending an extra £100 a month on interest rates, if you decided at renewal to really claw back the high rates you're paying by going for lower rates, you'll make savings, which will make a big positive dent on your finances. The final bit really is that discipline of sticking to setting a plan and delivering on it, because the budget is good as creating it, but if you don't actually apply it to the way you want to apply it to your lifestyle, particularly your finances, it's no point trying it. So those are my little giveaways, which will not cost you much, really. Thank you.
Thank you, Amidou. Okay. Right. I've just a few things I want to mention there. And we are just to conclude. On the 20th of this month, we have a session on prostate cancer. Now, if you are, actually, I say, whoever you are, the likelihood is that you'll know somebody, somebody who's a male person, spouse, brother, father, cousin. You
King of
might even.
England.
So
King of England.
yes, yeah. It is one of those conditions which, if you see our blurb, is something that the statistics says that one in four of us Black men will have this. You might be a bit younger, but you still need to be familiar with what this is all about. So please promote that and let us get some people involved in that conversation so we can protect each other. Second thing is on the 30th of March, we are having a community awards event, and at the moment on our website, we are promoting the community awards, which has 5 categories in it. I put on in the chat the link to the website. We are looking for nominations for people to participate in that. And my final point is that within the session on the 30th of March, we've got a what we call a local talent spot. So if you know of anyone who's got some local artistic and talent of that nature who would like to showcase that, then please get in touch with us. Through the website, you'll find our email address there as well. I can put it there. That being said, I want to then just say thank you to Amidou for presenting an enlightening session as always. Thank you all for being here. By all means, contact us if you have any other further thoughts. But on that note, I'm going to say bye-bye and have a good rest of the evening.
Thank you, Amidou.
Not recording.
That was
Thank you.